For many who have claimed the power of prophecy, their gift is not a matter of birthright. Instead, its appearance has been linked to some life-altering event. Fatima, Portugal, 1917. 3 children believed they were given a glimpse into the future. 9-year-old Lucia, 7-year-old Francisco, and 6-year-old Jacinta claimed visitation by a beautiful woman who entrusted them with secret messages, prophecies. While many appear to have come true, one message is still outstanding. A secret known only to Lucia, the 9-year-old girl, who today is a nun, and the Pope, John Paul II. In 1917, no one knew what awaited this sleepy little community. But the impact was so intense that more than 70 years later, it has become a haven for the hopeful. One of the many places in the world where believers claim to have seen a miracle, and one of the few places where the Catholic Church accepts that a miracle took place.
When an apparition is stated by the Church to be worthy of belief, bishops or pope go to the shrine. This certainly is a very strong recommendation to the Catholic believer. It's not binding, you can still disagree if you want to, but that clearly the highest authorities in the Church would not single it out in this way if they didn't think that it probably was true.
In the spring of 1917, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta claimed to have seen an angel that told them that soon they would be visited by the Virgin Mary.
When the children first reported this to their parents, they were horrified because most really solid Catholics, even if they're not all that well educated, they know this does not happen every day, and that usually when somebody claims it, it's not true.
But the children were convinced, and they anxiously awaited the arrival of the beautiful woman who would become known to them as the Virgin Mary. Then on May the 13th, 1917, the angel's prophecy was reportedly fulfilled.
The first appearance was where she had to identify herself to them, and as is often reported in apparitions of the Blessed Virgin, she was radiant, showing that it was a supernatural being.
According to the children, the Virgin Mary appeared numerous times with messages of prophecy. As years passed, many of these predictions apparently came true. The children described what may be the rise of communism, with the genocide of millions and the enslavement of nations. They also described what could have been the fall of communism in Russia. Back in 1917, these dire predictions were greeted with suspicion. It wasn't until the children predicted a miracle that even the most skeptical of minds were made true believers. On October the 13th, 1917, tens of thousands of people anxiously awaited the appointed day and hour.
The children were there, and this huge crowd was pressing in, and the rain was pouring down, and all of a sudden the rain stopped, and the clouds parted, and the sun appeared. And then the crowd saw the sun begin to move and to dance in the sky, as it was described, and to fall down almost to the horizon.
The crowd was in absolute awe. There were many of the free thinkers from Spain and Portugal there who were very much against religion or anything of this nature, who immediately were convinced and fell on their knees and started repenting and asking for forgiveness for their lack of belief. It was an awesome experience, and it did show to the world that something valid had been happening at Fatima.
Despite the so-called miracle of the sun, there were still many questions as to the validity of the children's story. It would take time, but eventually even hardened disbelievers would come to rethink the events of 1917.
This is very important, to follow what happens to the children or to anyone who sees or claims to have seen the Blessed Virgin Mary. One of the best proofs of whether it was really she is whether their lives are fundamentally and forever changed. And it certainly happened with the Fatima children.
Early on in the apparitions, the children were told that 2 of them would die and would go to heaven, and the other one would remain for many years. Now, this has absolutely happened, and it happened right away. The children died of the terrible influenza epidemic which was going on. And this is hardly a thing that children could have foreseen or would have created for themselves.
In the case of the third child, Lucia, we have overwhelming evidence. She desired nothing but the religious life from the time that this happened. She has been in the cloistered Carmelite house at Coimbra since 1948. This is the life that she wants, that she welcomes, a life of total devotion to God and to the Blessed Virgin. "45 years later,
Lucia still lives in a convent. With her remains the last message, or perhaps a final prophecy from Fatima. Whichever it is, Lucia has only shared it with one other person, Pope John Paul II. Some speculate that their shroud of silence covers some future catastrophe, but it's a secret that apparently will never be known. But perhaps the essence of that secret can be found elsewhere.